Hello out there, space fans, and welcome to another fun-filled week in space. What's up, Jade? I've been thinking about you. Nice to see you, my friend. I'll text you. I'll text you later. Hello, everybody. I'll text you all later. Come on in, get comfortable, get something energetic to drink if that's where you're at, or maybe something calming. I don't know. Get something good to drink. Make yourselves comfortable. We're gonna talk. What's up? We're gonna good morning, Seven. Nice to see you. I'll catch you for laundry after this. Hey, good morning, Josh. Yeah, oh my God, I get to see all these beautiful people on a Monday. What a joy. What a I feel so honored to get to do this every week and to get to contribute to the collective I don't know, understanding of what's going on in space. What's up, dog? Um, yeah, and to sort of each week I sort of like have to amp myself up. Yo, what's up? Nice to see you, Lisa, everything. Every week I have to like sort of amp myself up and and be like, okay, like we're doing this. Why are we doing this? And this kind of dovetails with some of the astrology of the week because we are talking about some retrogrades. We had Saturn station retrograde over the weekend, and then Neptune is stationing retrograde on Tuesday, I believe. And so we're kind of like rethinking some structures, rethinking some dreams. And every week I'm like, why am I doing this? Do we need like do we really need more people talking about stuff in the world? Which I'm on the fence about that. I think that we have enough people talking about enough stuff. However, what I sort of hold to is that I have what I have discovered is maybe a unique perspective on things. At least I take a lot of joy in it, and I take a lot of joy in being able to sit here and talk into a bunch of Apple products and sort of contextualize what's going on in space as a way of contributing and an offering and a way of being of service to the collective. And what my hope is that through my fun-filled adventures through space, it helps to bring a little bit of context to what's going on. And I think this is the real gift of astrology, that instead of being like, oh my God, I think I'm losing my mind, what is happening? We get to be like, oh, these feelings are normal based on the influences that I'm receiving from the celestial bodies in their orbit through the cosmos. Not that the planets make us do anything, but we are in relationship to everything around us, and in the idea of chaos theory, if a butterfly flaps its wings someplace across the Atlantic, I sneeze, right? And we are all kind of intertwined in this web of life. And as pieces of that web get pushed and pulled, it has effect on our internal systems. It has effect on our physical systems. It has an effect on our lymphatic and energetic systems, right? It has effect on our psychological systems. And so instead of, oh, thank you, Lily, instead of wandering through the world being like, oh my God, I think I'm losing my mind, right? Which like, it be like that sometimes. We can move through the world and be like, okay, I am being pushed and pulled by all of these forces. Some of them are systemic, some of them are astrological, some of them are biological, some of them are psychological. And by having an understanding of what that push and pull feels like, we can also be like, what is the best way that I can possibly show up for this? How can I use this push and pull to my advantage? How can I contextualize this? How can I understand this? And how can I come into right relationship not only with myself, but the world around me? And so that's my little spiel of why I'm here. And, I also think it's a great gift to get to see all of my homies out there and to be able to share this with everybody because I don't get to see you all the time, and I'll take what I can get. So I love you all, and thanks for showing up today. I also want to give a big shout out to Astrostar Live and Lily Shen, who helps put this on every week. Astrostar Live is a great astrology app. It's a free download, and there's a pretty vibrant community of astrologers and pretty amazing people who are doing some great work over that app. They are offering readings, classes, discussions, talks. It's a great place to learn about astrology and to get involved in an astrologically minded community. And all of the advisors are real people. It's not AI. And they're like functioning at a pretty high level of astrology. A lot of them speak at NORWAC and ESAR and a bunch of conferences. Like Richard Winooski, Sam Reynolds, myself, Cameron Allen. And so I just wanted to put that out there because I do this talk through them and I'm an advisor on that app. So if you're interested in getting an astrology reading at any time, check me out on Astrostar Live and check out the vibe of what's going on over there, because it's a great place to learn about astrology and to get more involved in an astrological community. All right. So welcome to the astrology of the week, my friends. Let's see here. So I want to start off on kind of I want to start off with a recap of something that went down last week. On Saturday, which would have been the 29th, we had Saturn, the 29th of June, we had Saturn stationing retrograde at 19 degrees and 26 minutes of Pisces. I talked at length about that last week. You can, if you missed it, you can check it out on my YouTube, which is Camp Wizard Camp, I think, or on my Instagram. Anywho, now that we have like a couple days from when Saturn station retrograde, and a retrograde planet slows down and Saturn already moves pretty slow. They slow down, they grind to a halt, they station and just like sort of hold it down on this 1 degree, and then they start moving backwards. And so, when things turn retrograde, we don't necessarily expect to see, oh my God, like this all makes sense or this is what's happening. However, I have noticed a couple of things that popped up in the news that I feel relate to Saturn and Saturn's retrograde. As a planet moves retrograde, it sort of rethinks, redoes, reimagines, reconfigures, and also turns inward. And so there's a couple things in the news that I'm like, this is pretty interesting. The first being the presidential debate, which happened last Thursday. And on the first level, we have two really old people who are debating each other, right? And Saturn governs the elderly. So we have like already a Saturnian thing going on with that debate. And in the wake of the debate, there have been a lot of people calling for Joe Biden to step aside, which is kind of a rethinking of the structure of the Democratic Party, right? So as Saturn is turning retrograde, we're kind of like rethinking structures and how things are structured. And which old person, we want to get behind. Another thing that's happening kind of related to the Saturn retrograde, in my mind, is in France, there are snap elections that are happening, which are reconfiguring the structure of French government, which is probably bringing a far-right party to power, which feels like pretty oppressive and Saturnian. Also back in the US, we had a couple Supreme Court cases that came down last week. One which struck down the Chevron ruling, which said that judges and courts, the Chevron case said that judges had to defer to governmental agencies in making regulations, and that was just struck down. So it's now the courts are able to determine regulation, which is like basically it's deregulating. And if we think of Saturn as structure and limitation, Saturn going retrograde, and there's a Supreme Court case which sort of paves the way for massive deregulation. And then the last one is that another Supreme Court case came down, which basically criminalized homelessness and said that unhoused people can be fined and arrested and thrown in jail, even if they don't have any place else to go. So people who are camping in public, people who are unhoused, can now be arrested and fined. which Saturn rules over people who are down on their luck and people who are unhoused, right? So like Saturn's children, who Saturn is like kind of protecting, Saturn goes retrograde and those protections sort of leave. And so I don't know, I don't want to like start us off with a bummer, like sort of recapping the terrestrial news, but I do think it's interesting when we have these kind of shifts in space, what kind of comes about from that and the way that that plays out in the collective, in the mundane, in the people, and in the news. And so, Saturn is retrograde until November 15th, which is 2 weeks after the US presidential election. And so I think that these sort of issues that are already popping up with Saturn's retrograde are kind of going to be woven into the fabric of what is happening with life in the US, and also what's happening or going to happen with the presidential election. I have no idea what's going to happen with the presidential election. I'm not interested in calling that or making predictions about it. But I just think it's interesting to notice what sort of develops in the news as we go through these shifts, because this can help us to be like, okay, that's how this is playing out, right? Because we have a sort of, kind of, I don't know, a collection of archetypes, right? And the ways that they can play out are they can play out in many different ways. And noticing, okay, this is the vibe of how this is going, can be interesting in terms of framing how we respond to things and what we can expect. Yes, somebody, Opalescent asked if they can find people who don't have any money, and yes, they can. And they can incarcerate people who can't pay their court fines. And so this opens the way for the criminalization of homelessness and people being warehoused in prisons if they can't pay their court fines. So, on to some other news, the astro weather. Starting this week, we don't have much going on Monday, but on Tuesday, July the 2nd, we have a bunch of stuff popping off. So, on Tuesday, we have Neptune stationing retrograde at 29 degrees and 56 minutes of Pisces. So Neptune has gotten all the way 4 minutes, 4 arc minutes from entering into Aries, and they sort of grind to a halt and start working their way back through the last degrees of Pisces. Neptune's pretty slow moving. They are pretty far out there. I think they have a 150-year cycle around the zodiac. They'll be retrograde until December the 7th of this year, and they will retrograde back to 27 degrees and 7 arc minutes of Pisces. So that's about 5 minutes. Sorry, that's about 5 months of retrograde, and only moving back about 3 degrees. So that gives you an idea of how slowly Neptune moves. And this is why Neptune sort of has such an impact, and the outer planets have such an impact, because they spend a long time sort of like churning up anything that's happening in a degree of the zodiac. Right, they're just sort of posted up there, and Neptune is just like, tide goes out, tide goes in, tide goes out, tide goes in, and it's sort of like washing and waving and dissolving and slowly kind of dissolving our ideas of identity, our boundaries, things that we feel like we're separated from. So Neptune is dissolving all of these kind of structures, right? They can be psychological structures, they can be internal structures. I really see Neptune as this like power of water that is slowly washing over things and kind of like eroding them, right? And smoothing them out, which can be helpful in the long run, but can also be like pretty painful if it's stationing around, I don't know, relationships, if it's stationing around your identity, if it's stationing or like hanging out around your career, right? Any of these things that Neptune is just slowly like, eroding with spiritual seawater can be pretty difficult, because Neptune's like, just let it go. It doesn't matter, right? Everything is on loan anyway. What does it matter? Let's just like toss it all in the ocean and return to the source. And, our sort of ego identity is like, absolutely not. I am here for a reason. I have a job to do. I have things that I want to do, and I'm not really ready to just like throw all of my stuff in the ocean and walk away. So there can be like some tension there, with the Neptunian desire to dissolve and reconnect with the everything, and the ego desire to individuate, to become an individual separate self, to make our way in the world. Um, so, um, so Neptune's retrograde kind of like can dissolve our certainty in things, and it can ask us to rethink our beliefs, what we are believing in, right? Neptune, Saturn, which turned retrograde the other day, is helping, which is helping us to like ground in the spiritually minded water sign of Pisces. Saturn now retrograde is sort of like the structures that Saturn has been holding down, is kind of like releasing a little bit. And so we may feel kind of ungrounded for a while. We might feel adrift, right? We could think about Saturn in Pisces as an anchor, and Saturn, through Pisces being sort of this wake up call, being like, what is actually real? What is actually happening here? And then Saturn is maybe like checking out a little bit and being like, yo, I got to go back. I left something in the oven. Like, good luck to you. And Neptune is like, oh, it's on now, right? And kind of dissolving and releasing some of the things that we were believing in. And this can be helpful, right, if our beliefs were unhelpful. But it can also feel kind of unmooring and ungrounding if we're like, I don't even know what to believe in anymore. And again, I think that, I didn't have a lot of belief in American democracy to begin with. But I think that it is, as these planets in Pisces are retrograding, I'm like losing whatever shreds of faith I had in our representative system of democracy. So that's like a personal experience, right? But it can break down the ideals and ideas that we believed in, right? Also, can dissolve like structures of identity and things that we have been holding to, and the things that we feel like are holding us. And it's not even, and can dissolve like boundaries between ourselves and the world, right? And also like internal boundaries, right? The compartmentalization of things and emotions and experiences. The corrosive power of the Neptunian water can also begin dissolving those things, which can feel overwhelming and can lead to a sense of flooding, right? And again, if the Saturnian structures are starting to recede as well, we can kind of feel flooded over the next several months, and so also rethinking, what we kind of hold to and how we deal with flooding or an influx of water. And I think one of the things that happens with flooding or emotional flooding is the feeling of, I'm going to get swept away. I'm never going to be okay. If I start crying, I will never stop, right? This feeling is too big and I can't hold it. And so really thinking about what are the ways in which we can hold the feelings that might be arising, especially if some of our old structures are beginning to erode or dissolve, right? What can we do if there is an excess of water? How do we rechannel that? And Neptune talks about creativity and imagination as really good ways of working with this, right? So maybe rethinking our relationship to the spirit, rethinking our relationship to creativity, rethinking our connection to our imagination, right? Because Neptune is like longing for this kind of like undifferentiated state of being that just wants us to be swallowed up by the great ocean of consciousness. And also that can be unsafe, right? Especially because cars are real and we live in individual bodies who have individual lives. And so how do we, open ourselves up to a reconfiguration of our connection to the all and everything, and a new understanding of our spiritual capacities, right? And also maintain our kind of individual identities. And I think this is the challenge of the Neptune retrograde. I'm just going to spend like one more minute on this, but as Neptune retrogrades, we are also rethinking the dream and reconsidering our vision, right? And so what is the kind of like dream that we are working towards? What is that initiating vision that holds us and directs us? What is the lighthouse that we are sort of navigating to? And we can think about and I love to think about Neptune in relation to the Odyssey, right? Which Jason Hawley does a great talk on this, which I think you can get from Astrology University. But in the Odyssey, Penelope, Odysseus's wife, is weaving this tapestry and is like, okay, I will choose a suitor, right? Penelope is being hounded by all of these suitors who are like, your husband's dead, marry one of us. And they're just like posted up at her house, eating her food, abusing her servants, being total dicks. And Penelope is like, okay, I'll marry one of you when I'm done with this weaving. And so every day she like weaves this tapestry, and every night she undoes it, right, and pulls it back so that she's never done and never has to marry a suitor, and actually never has to make a choice, right? She never has to like show up and be like, you bastards, get up out of here, right? Get your feet off my table, right? Turn off my TV, leave my house at once, right? Stop using my Wi-Fi. And so like the Neptune retrograde also keeps us in this limbo state of like the thing that we were doing and then undoing it, right? And then we're doing it again and then undoing it, sort of like the tide going in and tide going out, tide going in, tide going out, right? Never really get anywhere. Right. And so it can be this sort of limbo feeling, or this feeling of everything that I've been doing becomes undone. And how do we sit with that, and how do we hold that, and also how do we show up and make choices, right? How do we show up and say, this is what I want, this is the dream that I'm navigating towards, right? This is the thing that I am choosing. And like either I'm finishing this tapestry or I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to tell these people they have to leave and set a boundary, right? And I think the last thing that I want to say about the Neptune retrograde is, in this tide going in and tide going out vibe, as the tide recedes, which might be the retrograde, we are left with all these sort of rubble, right? The shiny rocks, or, microplastics, or all of the stuff that is left after the tide goes out. And so there is an opportunity also, as the water recedes in the retrograde, to be like, okay, what is actually here? What am I left with? Right? What is this vision? What is this dream? What is this tapestry that I'm working on? Do I want to consider this, or what needs to get renegotiated so I can be in a better relationship with the vision that I'm trying to achieve, and sort of noticing the like gunk that is left as the tide goes out. All right. So also on Tuesday, we're getting Mercury in Cancer trining Neptune at, again, 29 degrees and 56 minutes of Pisces. So basically, just as Neptune is stationing direct and grinding to a halt at this really charged 29th degree, Mercury at the very edge of Cancer, at the end of Cancer, coming in to form a nice supportive trine. And so this is a water trine between Cancer, cardinal Cancer, and mutable Pisces. And so, Mercury in Cancer, and Mercury through the water signs, I think, is getting emotional information, right? And gaining emotional intelligence. And so there can be this sense of like emotional intelligence connected to our visions and dreams. And this can be inspiring and creative, right? Neptune is creativity. It is the like imagination and the bigger vision, right? The sort of flow state that connects us to the divine. And Mercury coming in to form the supportive trine aspect with Neptune is kind of able to channel some of that vision, some of that transpersonal information, and make connections with it, right? And so this is a really good time to engage in creative practice or process, right? Great time to do dream work, right? Because Neptune is the dream realm, it is the unconscious realm, and Mercury is giving us access, giving us cognitive access to this dream realm, right? And so writing down your dreams or doing automatic writing or automatic painting, right? Any of the ways that we can allow our sort of cognitive mind, our mercurial mind that's making connections, right? That's conveying information to get in tune with that Neptunian everything is everything, right? The Neptunian creative flow. And so we can have Mercury maybe like step to the side or open up a little bit to channel all of that Neptunian information, that sea of consciousness, into little ways that we can process and understand that, either through writing or art or movement or our dream life, you know? This is a good time to let the mind wander, to imagine things, to daydream, to allow ourselves to be in that sense of reverie, right? To just allow the mind to wander and see where it goes. We also might be picking up on intuitive information, so picking up on the information of the emotions and the senses, and allowing ourselves to trust that, right? Mercury also rules over liminal spaces, and that space between dream and waking is a liminal space, and the dream space is a liminal space. And so creating access to those spaces, or putting an emphasis on the dream space, or doing active imagination practices, right? Or creative practices that allow us to tap into the unconscious, whatever that looks like for you, is going to be pretty productive. The other thing that I just want to bring in is that Mercury is a trickster, and Neptune is a planet that is connected with illusion and delusion and disillusion. So watch out for things that might seem too good to be true, right? And also there can be like some deception in here. This is a supportive aspect, but trines are easy, right? So it might be like, oh, this is too good to be true. Like that seems really easy and great. I'm just going to take this shortcut and flow down the river. And then you might find yourself up Shit's Creek without a paddle, as they say. And Mercury moves quickly, so this isn't a long transit, but we might be there's a possibility that we might find ourselves in places where we're not trusting the information that's coming through, or we might be deceiving ourselves. And so always, whenever Neptune's involved, always finding ways of reality testing. Right. And this is one thing if you're just like, oh, I'm going to like allow myself to daydream and imagine some things. It's another thing if you want to like invest a bunch of money because somebody told you this is a good idea today. And I would check in with other people and Saturnian people and old people, right? People who might know the business before you go investing a bunch of money based on like something that you saw on Instagram. And that's all I'm talking about. Mercury moves quickly, but watch out for things that are too good to be true, and watch out for wanting to just like disassociate and live in the fantasy. Creativity, imagination, spirituality, good. Totally checking out of reality. Maybe not the best, but again, Mercury moves quickly, so this is going to be a short transit. Also on Tuesday, July the 2nd, which is a pretty packed day, we have Venus in Cancer trining Saturn in Pisces. So we get, on one hand, at the edge of Cancer and Pisces, we have this very imaginative, very dreamy transit that is really good for creativity. Little further back in Cancer and Pisces at 19 degrees and 25 minutes, we have Venus, which is values, and Saturn, which is structure, right? So we get some like emotional and relational structures that help with some emotional stability. And this can help us to create structures that help us to feel safe so that we can lean into connection. Saturn is really good with boundaries, and Saturn trining Venus will help us to have really good boundaries, or help us to think about or rethink about our boundaries as Saturn is retrograde. And I think boundaries are such a key piece in relationship because and a key piece with Venus, because Venus is not only this is what I like and this is what makes me feel good, but Venus is like, this is disgusting, this is gross, get this away from me. And I think where Venus gets messed up is if they don't feel like they have the ability to say, I don't like this, right? If they don't have a voice or a way of creating that boundary. Coming back to Penelope, not having the ability to say, you suitors, get out of my house. I believe that my husband's still alive. Right. And just being like, oh, I have to sit with this, even though it's uncomfortable. And these people are like up in my business and like eating all my food, and Saturn, the planet of boundaries and limitations, is like, oh, hell no, that's not how this is going, right? And so Saturn is asking us to rethink and renegotiate our boundaries so that we can feel safe and supported in relationship. And I think one of the things with boundaries is having a really good no helps us to have a really great yes, right? When we're like, not that, allows us to be like, yes, this. And I think that is really important, especially for Venus, who likes things, right? Who likes to feel good. And if we know what doesn't make us feel good, then we have a bigger opportunity to explore what does make us feel good. And it helps to separate those things out. Right. Venus is also about value. And Saturn is helping us to understand our value and to really value ourselves and to recognize in relationship, do I feel valued? Right? Am I able to honor my self-worth? How do I feel about my self-worth? Right? Are these people reflecting that I am valuable, that I am worthy? Right? Am I seeking that out from people? Am I trying to get that from people who are incapable of validating me? And Saturn's like, if that's the case, then cut them out, baby, right? You don't need that in your life, right? And Saturn is really helping to create structures so that we can feel valued and we can really step into and lean into our feelings of self-worth and to recognize what are the areas of life that we're able to receive that and what are the structures that are helping to support our experience of self-worth and how we find value in ourselves and how we find value in our relationships, right? Do we feel like, oh, I'm always giving and giving and giving, and by giving, that's what makes people like me? Or does that get renegotiated and we're like, I'm good how I am, and like I'm creating structures where the people who I let in my sphere are able to like lift me up and support me, right? Because Venus in Cancer is also looking for, people that we feel safe enough around to feel vulnerable, right? And Cancer, I don't really see as being transactional, right? Cancer is that kind of familial love where it's like, we're here, we're together. I like you, I don't like you, but we're family, right? It's not transactional. It's not like, oh, if I do this, then I get that. Right. And so being able to create structures where we can feel seen and supported and valued without having to like jump through hoops or perform for other people, because Cancer isn't about that. Right. One last thing that I'll say about this aspect is that Venus is a planet of the night sect. Right. And not to go too deep into the doctrine of sect, but in traditional astrology, we have Venus and Mars, who are night planets, Jupiter and Saturn, who are day planets. Mercury goes both ways, right? The night planets like Venus and Mars are like, I see that thing, I want it, right? They're kind of like into the short-term enjoyment and like the real feel of instant gratification, right? So Venus wants to have fun. Venus like wants to have a good time. Venus wants to feel good, right? And it's kind of into the instant gratification and the like, kind of ecstatic fun of the moment. Saturn, who is a day planet, is much more into like structures, schedules, long-term goals, right? And if you think about day and night, like during the day, we're up, we're doing work, we're sending emails, right? We're like adhering to a schedule. At night, we go dancing, right? At night, we do the Venusian things of like going dancing and, going out to fancy restaurants and making love. During the day, we are doing the Saturnian work of like going to our job and typing on a computer and being at a place on time, right? And like taking care of responsibilities and running errands, all that shit that Venus absolutely detests, right? And so Saturn, who is like, I am doing this for the greater good of the long-term achievement so that I can retire and like get in a Winnebago and drive around the country, right? And take photos. right? And Venus is like, but I want to have fun now. And in this trine, we are negotiating ways of supporting Venusian fun on a longer term level, right? So it's not, I just spent all my money at the club and now, it's Monday again and I got to figure out how I'm going to get the rent paid. Right. Saturn is like, okay, well, if you saved some of that money and only spent half of that money at the club, then we would be in a better place in the long term. And so we're getting the Saturnian responsibility, right, that is helping support Venus's long-term goal of enjoyment and fun, right? And this might not be as ecstatic as blowing all your money on champagne at the club, but the kind of come down and the reciprocal reality check the next day isn't as severe, and we can have longer term, more sustained fun. So just something to think about this early part of the week is like, how do we structure long-term sustainable enjoyment, pleasure, and fun? Dig? Okay. Also Tuesday, July the 2nd. So whole lot of business going on tomorrow. We have Mercury entering into Leo. So Leo is a fixed fire sign, and Mercury will be there until July the 25th when they enter into Virgo. And then shortly after that, on August the 4th, Mercury will retrograde at 4 degrees of Virgo, and they will back on up into Leo on August the 14th. And then they will station direct at 28 degrees. They will station direct on August 28th at 21 degrees of Leo. And so starting Tuesday, we are beginning our slow down into the Mercury retrograde, right? It's not going to happen for a minute yet, not until the first week of August. But as Mercury moves through Leo, we can start picking up on some of the themes, some of the things that might get redone, rethought, reconsidered, reconfigured, right? And so as Mercury enters into Leo, they're kind of looking for the spotlight, right? Mercury is communication, thinking in communication. Leo, I like to think about as the like stage or the talent show, right? It is the talent show of life where everybody is like, I'm special, look at my special talent. Right. And so Mercury is like up there being like, look how special I am. Right. Look at my talent. Listen to me. And we can think about being able to speak up, right? We can think about being seen for our ideas, right? We can think about how we express ourselves and how we express our authentic self, and I think that there's a degree of like courage and confidence. It takes courage to step up on stage. It takes confidence to be in the spotlight. And also Mercury, when they get that spotlight on them, is like, I'm not leaving. Right? I got another joke. Just one more thing. And I think what we get to think about is the ways in which we are special, the way our thoughts and ideas that are unique, the ways that we communicate that are special and unique, and how we can be special as the individual, unique children of God, and not have to like put somebody else down so that we can be special, right? How I can be special, and by me being special, you can also be special, right? It's not either or. And I think that this is one of the traps that we very easily fall into, that says like, if you're in the spotlight, then I can't be in the spotlight. How can we like co-create? How can we create win-win situations? And I think that the ability to show our unique talents and the things that make us each special, like helps to promote that ability in others, and it shouldn't take away from. I shouldn't like steal the spotlight from somebody else, because the sun is big enough that it shines on all of us, right? And if one person's in the sun, that doesn't mean somebody else can't be, right? And so I think as Mercury moves through Leo, we get to like pick up gather the evidence, right? Mercury making connections, getting information about what makes us special, right, about what makes us unique. And we can also gather evidence about what makes other people special and unique. And I think what would be really cool is to be able to communicate that to other people, being like, hey, I noticed when you did that, that was really cool, right? I really appreciated that. I think that's really awesome the way that you know move through the world, or the way that you said that, and being able to like have the courage, right? And I think one of the pieces of Leo is also about royalty, right? And is stepping into like nobility and sovereignty. And I think the best part of nobility is to raise other people up, right? And to be like, hey, you're awesome, right? Get on up here, come on down, right? Play our game, you're awesome. So I think that Mercury is gathering facts and making connections that help us, put together what makes us special, what makes other people special, and helps to enhance our identity. And of course, Mercury is going to retrograde back through Leo, and we're going to be like, oh my God, that wasn't true, right? And then it's going to move direct forward through Leo, and we're going to be like, oh my God, yes, it was. I am special and unique, right? Um, Yeah, and I think one of the ways that Leo functions is being like, "Hey, I did this thing, right? Do it. Who liked it? Who noticed it? Right? Anyone like it? Did you like that? Oh, you like that? Okay, I can do more of that. Oh yeah, I have a drawer full of more of that right here. Right? Oh, you didn't like that? Oh, that's not what I do. No, that was somebody else did that one. I was just no, I would never do that. Right? So it's being able to like really play off the audience and get the feedback of how like, oh, you like that, okay, I can, that's what I do. Oh, you didn't like that, no, I don't do that, right? And so I think as Mercury moves through Leo, we're going to be more attuned to what the audience is saying, and ideally we want to find the right audience for what we're doing. For example, right, I don't think that I like this would go over as well at like a lawyer's conference. If I like showed up looking looking like a discount Hunter Thompson at a lawyer's conference and like started talking astrology, I don't know if they would like feel it the same way as the reception that I'm getting here. So I think it's important to also choose your audience and to know the crowd, right? And yeah, then the following day on Wednesday, July 3rd, we have Mercury just entering into Leo, opposing Pluto in Aquarius at 1 degree and 20 minutes. So we have Mercury like jumping on stage, being like, hey, I'm here. Right? And then in the audience is just like, Pluto, right? Like the like a Grim Reaper, right? Or a mortician, right? And it's like, oh, right, how do we relate, So this can bring up some like mental intensity. It can also bring up obsessive thinking, right? Mercury has a relationship with Pluto as the psychopomp. Um, yeah, Opalescent says, read the room and ban lawyers from your talks. They might sue. So yeah, Mercury like opposing Pluto can bring up obsessive thinking. And yeah, that's what I was going to say. Mercury is the psychopomp, right? Who is the messenger of the gods, can go between the worlds, right? And they can go into the underworld. And they are in relationship with Pluto, Persephone, all of the chthonic deities. And so there is the ability to communicate with the kind of like depth of self in the underworld, in the unseen world, in the plutonic realms, right? However, moving into the underworld and the realm of the dead is like pretty intense, And so, we have Leo, which is this like very kind of, showy, wants to be in connection with the crowd and wants to be seen as special. And then like you go into the underworld and like nothing's really special in the underworld, right? Everybody is the same. Everybody's dead, right? And so how does this kind of almost like comedic or like very flamboyant Mercury function in relationship with Pluto, right? And so how do we like hold I am special and also like everything is special, right? Or I am special and nothing is special, because eventually we will all return to dirt and ashes, right? And we are just here for this little blip of time, right? And so we can also think about what are the kind of connections that are being made between our unconscious and the depths, and how the unconscious informs our sense of identity, right? And the axis of Leo and Aquarius, right? Mercury and Leo, Pluto and Aquarius. The axis of Leo and Aquarius is like the collective and the individual. And we can think about this. My friend Mickey Pellerano, I think he was talking about the fifth house and 11th house, but we'll use it with Aquarius and Leo. Leo is like the artist studio where you're there, you're like in your creative flow, you're really like burning bright and being like, oh my God, I'm like creating a masterpiece. And then Aquarius is like the gallery where you put that on a white wall and like a bunch of people sipping wine kind of like murmur about it, right? And like that sort of like disconnect between like the self and the collective, and this is my inner soul that I'm bearing here, and people being like, oh yeah, nice use of color, right? I'm curious about that composition, right? Um, and so, I think Mercury as like the planet that receives information and communicates it, and Pluto, which is the depths and in a lot of ways the collective unconscious. Mercury can have some like ideas about the collective unconscious, right? Things might arise, especially coming off of that pretty dreamy relationship with Neptune, coming into this hard opposition with Pluto. We might get some ideas about like what the collective is like, or the sort of energy of the collective unconscious. And I think that the other piece with Leo, which is like, look at me, and Pluto in Aquarius or Pluto in the collective, it's like, oh, maybe that's actually not safe to be seen. And maybe I should make myself small, because if I'm afraid that if I stand up and like wear my like wild clothes and speak my truth, somebody's going to be like, there's a witch, burn them, right? Which, that sounds funny, but that was actually like a reality for a lot of people for a long time. And I think that reality is still very real in various ways throughout the modern world. And so I think this brings up this tension between this is my unique self and this is the message that I have for the collective. And I'm afraid if I say this, they're going to kill me, right? Or shut me down, or shut me out. And Aquarius is a sign of exile, right? It is everything beyond the walls of the city. And for a long time, to be exiled meant to die, right? Because we needed the sort of societal structures to support our well-being and our livelihood and our life. And if we were kicked out, and went into the Aquarian beyond the wall, we could very well die. And I think that fear is really embedded in the human system, that I need to belong. I need to fit in. I need to be accepted to be okay and to stay alive. And there's a lot of, emphasis towards individuality in the modern Western world. And also, I think that there's like core pieces of the self that are like, if I stand out, if I'm called out, if I am, seen as different, that can be really detrimental to my life and my livelihood and my ability to survive. And I think that is some of the tension between this like very fiery Mercury in Leo, who is like getting on stage and spitting fire, and the very kind of spooky unconscious collective of Pluto and Aquarius. And so the last thing that I just want to bring up with this is Pluto and Aquarius, can be a lot of the questioning of celebrity culture, right? And I think Mercury in Leo can be like the celebrity or the celebrity culture, right? The image of the person on stage, and then the kind of huddled masses who are like everybody else, that, culture is like, look at them, aspire to that, right? Aren't they great? Aren't they so great? And they're ribbons and bows, right? And the rest of us are like, yeah, that's cool, but like, they're telling us to eat cereal for dinner because we can't afford food. And like, I don't really care about Taylor Swift's private jet, you know, except for to like recognize how like insulting that is that people are jet setting around and like destroying the environment in their private jets while everybody else is trying to like get enough money for rent and to feed their families, right? And I think that kind of disconnect gets activated with Mercury opposing Pluto, and also with Pluto through Aquarius, these sort of rethinking the cult of personality and rethinking why we value celebrity. And as Mercury retrogrades through Leo, I think this is going to really come up, right? The energy that we give to celebrities, why we think they're special, why they think they're better than us, and uh, like why are celebrities important when there's all this suffering happening. And I see Pluto through Aquarius very much as like a French Revolution type of vibe, where the Leo opposition is like, let them eat cake, everything is great, I don't see what the problem is. And Pluto and Aquarius is like, there are serious structural problems here and we're about to burn it all down. Great. So let's move on to Friday, July 5th, which gives us a new moon in Cancer, which is happening at 14 degrees and 23 arc minutes of the cardinal water sign of Cancer. This is exact, right? So this means that the moon is directly opposing the sun at 3:57 in the PM Pacific time, making that 6:57 PM Eastern time. So if you're doing magic connected to this new moon, you want to be doing your releasing and shedding, right? Leading up to that exact point, 3:57 Pacific time, 6:57 Eastern time, right? And then I would give it a little while, right, to rest in that dark moon, to rest in the full out breath. And then as the moon begins to wax ever so slowly, that is when we begin planting the seeds, sowing the seeds for something new to occur, right? And so Cancer deals with emotional security, right? And so we can think about what are the seeds that we are planting here to help us develop stronger roots, right? Better connections, and help to deepen our sense of emotional security, right? What are the sort of relationships that help to create this sort of sense of well-being and sense of belonging, right? To help me to feel, okay, I'm safe enough to be vulnerable, I'm safe enough to like speak my piece, right? I'm safe enough to open up and be able to be like, yeah, I'm like really special and unique and awesome, right? And for real, it takes some emotional security, like to be around people who you trust enough to be able to be like, yeah, I'm really great, right? Because most people are like, that's fucked up. I can't believe you would say that. It's like seems so awful to be like, yeah, I'm really good at this thing, right? To acknowledge our strengths, to acknowledge our abilities, right? Most of the time, we're taught to be really self-effacing, right? To not stand in the spotlight, to not take up too much space, right? It's like a false humility of being like, well, I'm like kind of suck at stuff, right? Everybody's like, yeah, me too. But like, what is it like to be like, yeah, I'm really great at something and you're really great at something too. Let's be really great at stuff together, And I think it does take that sense of safety to be able to be vulnerable enough to be like, yeah, I'm really good at this thing. I really love doing this thing is another one, right? There's the fear that if I say I really love this thing, it will be taken away. Or that it will be, people will be like, that thing's stupid, right? And then you have to be like, oh, yeah, I guess that thing's stupid, and then do it in secret. And that's a pretty bad feeling, right? We want to create the structures that help us to feel safe enough to be vulnerable enough to really step into what we love, who we are, and what we can do, and what we can actually contribute to the world. Um, and I think about Cancer as cardinal water, right? So this is like the source of life, right? The water spring that like feeds the ocean. Right. I also think about it as a tide pool that has like these strong enough walls, right, that holds this primordial soup so that life can develop. And this is the like primordial like container, this tide pool, right, that we are being held in. And it works in two ways, right? It is this like tide pool where life originates, and also it's the need to leave leave this sense of safety and to individuate, right? To be like, okay, like I was reared in this place and now I'm going to go off on my own, right? And I'm also going to recreate experiences of safety. And not everybody got safety in their like early childhood rearing years, and but we also get the opportunity as adult beings to sort of identify what safety feels like and to recreate that, and to create that for ourselves, and through friend groups, through community, through connection, through home, through our animal friends, right? And the feeling of a down regulated nervous system where we feel safe enough to be ourselves and to be in connection. And so I think cancer really speaks about like, oh, this interconnected oneness, right, of the origins of life. And then, okay, got that. Now I have a felt sense of what safety should feel like and what that like deep sense of connection should feel like. Now I got to leave and go make that for myself and find that in new ways. And so I think this is one of the archetypal pieces of cancer, right? Is this sort of longing to belong, right? And the points of belonging, right, that we find and how we can notice those and lean into those, but also not get lost in that, not get lost in somebody else, not get lost in the belonging to a group or a country or a relationship or a person, right? um, how we can take these senses of connection and belonging and bring them into other spheres of life, and not recreating early childhood environments, right? Not recreating the sort of lost sense of security, but like creating new experiences of safety and connection. And so, in the last 5 minutes, I will bring us to, we got two more transits. Let me see if I can get through them. On Friday, July the 5th, during this new moon, we have Mars in Taurus sextile to Saturn in Pisces. And so this is a good balance between action and restraint. Mars is sort of like the gas pedal and Saturn is the brake, right? And so like when they are not in alignment and you're using the gas pedal and brake at the same time, it can be like really not that awesome, right? But if we are using the gas pedal and the brake together in a good relationship, we can really get someplace. And then we can also stop when we get there, which is really important, right? And so Mars in the practical Earth sign of Taurus might be desiring to experience nice things and engage the senses, right? Saturn retrograding through Pisces is rethinking some of the ways we have been limiting ourselves and what we imagine and what we can imagine to be possible, right? And so putting these into relationship is like, okay, what are some of the structures that allow me to have nice things instead of like totally restricting myself or being like, oh, I can't do that, I can't have that, right? Da, 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 da. Yeah, and I think that thinking around protection, right? Action, protection, like how we can engage in action in structured ways that like help to move us closer towards our goal and our greater vision. And I think Saturn is really Saturn retrograde through Pisces is rethinking and reorganizing the greater vision, right? And Mars is like, cool, I want I want to do something, and Saturn gives us a good structure to do stuff within so that it's not just like lashing out or overindulging. It is like having enough of a yes, right? So that we don't get overfull or overindulgent. And, we can think about Saturn retrograde as this idea of the Saturnalia, right, which is a loosening of the bonds, right, a loosening of the chains of Saturn. And in Rome, the Saturnalia was an inversion of society where, servants would be masters, right? Everybody would celebrate. It was a return to the golden age, which Saturn used to rule over. And we see this around the world in things like Carnival and Mardi Gras, right, where society becomes inverted and we have a big party. And, we can think of Saturn retrograde as sort of like loosening the restrictions, which could be for better or for worse, right? And in this case, Mars is getting the opportunity to fulfill some desire, but not in a totally unrestrained way. right? But in a, ideally like helping to Saturn helps to structure the way that Mars fulfills their desires so that they don't overeat or overindulge, right? Um, all right. And yeah, like last piece of that, what does it look like to bring like a piece of the golden age, whatever that looks like to you, into our everyday life? Like, what is the golden age for you? What does that mean? You know? And I think that there's always this sort of nostalgic longing for things were great and they might not have been great, but what is the like little piece of a golden age that we can bring into our everyday life? And how can we bring or make the age that we're living in a little nicer and a little brighter through the actions that we take that encourage the Taurian ideas of pleasure, of peace, of connection with the earth, of enjoyment of the senses, right? And how can we bring those ideas? What are the actions that we can take to bring those ideas into the everyday life? Bring the golden age into our current age. And so last but not least, in the last minute that I'm here, on Saturday, July the 6th, we have Venus in Cancer squaring Chiron in Aries at 23 degrees and 21 arc minutes of those cardinal signs. And so this transit can activate some relational wounding, right? And I am fond of saying that we are wounded in relationships, so we need to heal in relationship. And this might be a transit rounding out the week that like activates some of that, activates some of the core relational wounds, the places that we don't feel valued, where we don't notice our worth, where we feel the kind of negative self-talk being reinforced through some of our relationships, and the need to like repair and heal in a relational container, because Chiron just wants to check out and go into their cave and wallow. And I don't think that's actually going to work. Maybe through, the weekend, but I think what's really important is where we get activated in that relational container and where those core Chiron wounds sort of emerge to lean in and kind of repair that in relationship, because I think that's really important, right? The isolation and separation does not repair those wounds. We need other people to do that repair work with, right? Um, yeah, Chiron kind of wants to be left alone, and Venus wants to be in relationship and in connection. And so those desires are at cross purposes. And last week we had Mercury squaring Chiron, which activated the mental connections around core wounding, right? And stories that we've been telling ourselves about our wounding, right? And the kind of intellectualization of these Chiron attributes. And now Venus is coming through to square Chiron and is kind of activating this on an emotional level, right? And really like activating it through the felt experience of relationship. And so this can bring up feelings of heartbreak and loss, right? And as we experience this, we can ask, like, what is the medicine that grows next to this poison? What are these feelings helping us to notice here? Right? How can we heal the relational wounds that are emerging to the surface? And this can bring up activation around our attachment styles, right? So Venus in Cancer can be very anxiously attached, right? Looking for connection and having a hard time that it's actually going to be there, right? Or yeah, the if we get to the like vulnerable inner side of that Cancerian archetype, it's like, well, why aren't you seeing me? Like, why aren't you texting me? Right? It can be like feeling very vulnerable if it's not being met. Or we can get the flip side of it, and Venus can be anxiously attached, and hiding behind that like Cancerian shell, and or sorry, avoidantly attached, hiding behind the Cancerian crab shell and not trusting that anyone can meet their needs and not letting anyone in and not allowing themselves to be vulnerable, right? So over the weekend, we get this great opportunity to play with our experience of vulnerability in the places that we're like, no, or like, please, right? And just noticing that and being like, okay, like, what is that bringing up, right? And how can I regulate myself, right? Or what do I need to feel okay here? And what might this be teaching me about the ways that I can heal? right? How does this activation help to bring healing in? And yeah, I think another piece of this is Venus can feel like pretty worthless, right? When or like that relationship with Chiron can make Venus feel like pretty worthless because they're not being met in relationship, and can bring up feelings of like body dysmorphia or like being unlovable. And that can be a really like difficult place to be in, when we start believing, oh, I'm unlovable, or no one loves me, or I don't trust when somebody tells me that they love me or that I'm good enough. And so thinking about how we can provide this sense of loving kindness to ourselves, right? And you might want to start working on this all through the week, is noticing the things that you're doing well, right? And I think this is Mercury moving into Leo, the things that you love about yourself, write them down, right? And then over the weekend, read them back to yourself. And you might be like, damn it, Jonah, I don't want to do this, but it might help, right? And allow those things to really sink in, right? How, like, the ways that you're able to love yourself, and the ways that we're able to practice loving kindness with everyone that we meet, and notice like the good attributes and the traits that we really value in other people and ourselves, you know? And there's a quote that is attributed to either Plato or Philo of Alexandria that says, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. And I think that is like the real talk over this weekend, right? That everybody is going to be going through it, and everybody's going to be feeling pretty insecure, and to be kind to each other, and also to be kind to ourselves, right? Because there is the deep desire for Chiron to withdraw and be like, I'm not good, right? No one loves me. But like, that ain't true, right? And I think what's really important is to be weaving in the sense of loving kindness all week. So when that feeling arises, because it will, you're human, right? It might not be the planets doing it, but you're human. And there's always that feeling of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not working hard enough, no one loves me, blah, 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 right? And to have some real, actual, factual evidence to the contrary of that can really help to support us in those difficult times, right? And as we support ourselves, right, and notice the things that we like about ourselves and the reasons that we're good enough and we're worth it, and we're glad that we're here, we can also share that with other people and help support other folks in our community, right? Even if it's the person at the coffee shop, and just being like, hey, like, you're great. I'm really glad that you're here. Give them an extra tip or whatever. And with that, my friends, I will bid you a fond farewell and wish you a very excellent week in space, and a very happy Cancer new moon, as we plant seeds for emotional security, emotional stability, and the tide pool of love. Thanks so much for tuning in. I do this each and every week at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Every week I'm like, I'm gonna get that one. No, I never do. 10 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Look it up for your time zone. Check me out. I also put it on YouTube, put it on the Instagrams, and check me out on the Astrostar Live app. Astrostar Live is a great place to engage with a very vibrant astrological community. People are giving talks, doing classes, breaking down the astrology of the week, breaking down the astrology of the month. There's some excellent astrologers there, like Sam Reynolds, Bear Hickman, Richard Winooski, Cameron Allen, doing some excellent work on the astrological front. I'm also there. I'm an advisor. So if you want to book a reading from me, check me out on Astrostar Live. I'm doing readings on weekends. So you can check my schedule to see if I'm available on a Saturday or a Sunday. Yeah, and that's all the astro weather that is fit to print, my friends. Oh yeah, one more thing. I usually do an astrology themed radio show, which is similar to this, but more talk, or less talk, more rock. I play music that goes along with the theme of the week. I didn't get to do it this past week because I had to work at Pride in Santa Fe, but this coming week I will have an excellent show for you. I guarantee you. I think that's starting to come out on Saturdays now because of my schedule. You can find it on SoundCloud, or I put links to it in my stories on Instagram, or you can check it out in my bio. I'll put a link in the next report for those folks on YouTube, and yeah, on Astrostar. Check me out. It's Camp Wizard Camp on the SoundCloud, and yeah, it's a great way of getting your astro weather for the week. Similar to this, but less talking. Anywho, thank you all for tuning in. It is a great pleasure to get to do this each and every week. Oh, somebody's saying that they'd like for everyone to listen to BTS Answer Love Yourself this week. And I totally support that. And Leah, I'm definitely putting that in my radio show. I love me some BTS, and I'm a big K-pop fan. So thank you for the recommendation. Excellent. Y'all have a great week in space, and I will see you next time. Same wizard time, same wizard channel. And